Yes, good morning to one and all. Myself is Dr. T. Ramesh Kumar of GC Srirangam. Now we are going to discuss about the subject smart grid. Right. So in a first unit, now we are going to discuss the smart grid first unit. In the first unit, which contains the evaluation of first one is evaluation of electric grid, and then concept, definition and need for smart grid, and then smart grid drivers, function, opportunities, challenges and benefits of a smart grids and drivers, and then difference between the conventional and a smart grid, and finally the national and international initiatives in a smart grid. So these are all the things we are going to discuss in our first unit, right? So now you can move on to an electrical grid. First one is a basic, that is basic of a smart grid as an electric grid, right? So in this electric grid, first you can see the definition of an electrical grid. So in the definition it means the grid or the power grid is defined as a network which interconnects the generation, transmission and a distribution unit, right? So electrical grid means it's nothing but an interconnection between this generation, transmission and distribution units. And also it supplies the electrical power from the generating unit to the distribution unit, right? So the supplies from the generations are distributed to the distribution unit, that is the consumers or a domestic consumers or some sort of industrial consumers, with the help of these grids. And a large amount of power is transmitted from the generating station to the load centers at a 220 kV or higher in a case of grids, right? The network from these high voltage lines are called as a super grid, and the super grid feeds the subtransmission network operating in a 132 kVA or less, right? The super grid transmits the 132 kV or a less. Then types of an electrical grid. So these electrical grids are classified into two types, that is regional and national. Now you can see that. First one is the power station of the grid is located near the fuel source, which reduce the transportation cost of the system. Next, but it locates far away from the populated area. It should be located far away, right? And then the power which is generated at a high voltage is stepped down by the help of step down transformer in the substation and then supplied to the consumers. Then the electrical grid is mainly classified into two types, that is regional grid. Regional grid is formed by interconnecting the systems, and the national grid is formed by interconnecting different region grids. Reason for interconnection. The interconnection of the grid provides the best use of the power resource and an energy grade security to the supply. So it makes a system economical and reliable, national grid. And the generating stations are interconnected for reducing the reserve generating capacity in each areas. So these are all things about the regional and the national grids, right? So this is a basic diagram or a diagram of an electrical grid. So you see, you can visualize this, the basic of an electrical grid. See here, the power is generated from the generating station, and from the generating station it is transmitted, that is the green lines, green or blue lines, which is called as the grids. And from the grid the supply is taken to the distribution system. That green houses are loads and the red houses are a generating station. and the towers. So you would have known that the basic of this one, what is meant by the generating station, and then towers, and then the load centers, and so on. So now you don't want to go in depth in this. Generally, I'll tell, from the generating station, the power is transmitted to the grid, and from the grid, the supplies are fed to the load centers as well as from all the loads, and it is interconnected with all the generating stations. That is called grid. So then the grid is, in the grids, the supply will be in a bidirectional. By following the basic formalities, they will synchronize all the supplies and it is fed to the grid. From the grid, it is fed to the following distribution systems. So in this you can see that there are how many distribution systems are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and so on. So from the distribution systems, it is fed to the load centers. So this is the basic of an electrical grid. Right? Remaining you can see in next session.